Technology is the most powerful change in the world of education.
Everything changes.
Welcome to the Emerging Technologies in Education podcast, delivered to you by Clever Books Company.
Dear listeners, and thank you for joining our podcast, Emerging Technologies in Education. And today we have Sean. Sean is going to share his experience in using technology in the classroom and share his point of view. So I want to give the word to Sean to introduce himself and tell which country he's from and what he's doing.
Hi, good afternoon. We're a UK-based online teaching business. We've been going now for 5 years. I founded the company in 2012. I'm a director of the business, and ostensibly Tute delivers small group learning using cloud technologies to pupils in classes across the UK, mostly in schools, but increasingly at home for parents. And those classes can either be a cohort of children from a single school or could be made up of children from different locations, given that the service is internet-based.
That's brilliant. And so you are dealing with education and with technology, which is absolutely great merge. So can you then tell me about your point of view, how positive you are, because I believe you are positive about using technology in education, and why is that?
Well, I think that the main driver for us is to improve outcomes for children. So what we see is that the traditional system serves probably 80% of pupils really, really well. So they'll go to school, they'll enjoy their learning, and they'll come out with qualifications that give them suitable life chances. But 20% of pupils just struggle in that environment for a number of different reasons, whether it's just not the right sort of situation for them to learn. They might have some learning difficulties themselves and feel oppressed in the class. They might have some behavioural challenges through conditions that they might be suffering. And I think for those pupils, we're trying really to look at ways in which we can recapture their imagination and get them re-engaging in their learning. And that's the role we see technology having, as well as obviously supporting people to attain and progress better within the core class also.
Brilliant. So as we are talking to you as the company who is dealing in technology and education, can you tell me a little bit more about Tute Education and what exactly you do and what kind of feedback you have from your customers?
Sure. So we've built a proprietary teaching and learning platform which is based in the cloud. We leverage mostly Microsoft technologies, so we use Azure and the 365 and Skype technology stacks mostly, and we employ teachers, so we only employ qualified teachers, because our belief is that the quality of teaching delivered by the technology, not the technology itself, is the reason why pupils make great progress. So from day one, we set out to do two things. Firstly, to measure everything that we've done. So we've worked with Durham University and Chester University, as well as tens of schools in the UK, to build evidence-based research and case studies as to our impact. And you can see all of those on our website if you're interested. And alongside all of the technology build, and we probably invested now over £1 million in the cloud platform, all of that investment has gone to support pedagogical outcomes. So the teachers have asked us to build something to support progress with children rather than taking something off the shelf. So we've moulded really now over 25,000 odd hours of teaching, a pedagogy and a cloud platform that really does support outstanding teaching and learning.
So this is brilliant to know that there are companies out there that are also in the edtech sector and they are supporting the teachers. So, and can you tell me, like, apart from what you do, what kind of technology, in your opinion, could be a good supplement for education in the classroom or maybe outside the classroom? Like, apart from smart boards, maybe like augmented reality or virtual reality or e-libraries or anything that comes to your mind, and why you think that?
Yeah, I think we've got two views really on what next. One's artificial intelligence, because I think learning can become more predictive, and I think there's economies and efficiencies that need to be brought into the system to ensure scale, because we all know there's going to be a significant shortage of teachers globally, and in that situation, we have to look at other ways, and I think AI has a definite role to play in that when supported by teachers, because it can reduce the burden on the teacher, so that really they're only intervening when a child requires support, whereas if they're able to self-learn and progress without that intervention, clearly the capacity is increased. So that's one aspect. And then I think the second piece really is trying to think about how we can take learning to a point where it's seen as a life skill rather than something that just resides within a schools-based environment. So I think sort of peripatetic type technologies that enable people to access learning at any point during their career, because moving forward, I think jobs are going to change regularly and will be very different from those that exist today. And having the skill sets and the ability to sort of morph with those changes as an individual is going to be really key. And clearly mobile, given the penetration of mobile technology globally, has absolutely a role to play, and learning via that device is still relatively immature.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And this is a really good futuristic point of view on education. And like, taking the advantage that you are based in the UK, can you tell me a little bit more, like, your opinion, and how do you feel? How acceptable the technology is in the classroom in UK schools? At which degree? What kind of technology? And how do you feel about, like, the education, the technology changing the education landscape in the UK in the future?
Yeah, so a few themes in there. I think the fundamental challenge we face in the UK is the capability of the teachers in deploying technology. I think, pupils, the millennium generation just lap it up. There's no issue with them accessing any device or learning how any particular platform or technology might work. It's just second nature to them. The challenge is more with the teaching cohorts, because very often they've not been given the appropriate training and they're not as sophisticated users as the pupils they're trying to support. And in those instances, you can start to create tensions which really shouldn't exist. And what we see when we go into schools and talk directly is that there's an initial resistance, because they just naturally think it's going to be difficult and hard and time consuming and something that's outside of their comfort zone, when actually it's not. The children are well able to log themselves into our platform, put on a headset and a mic and log in through a browser to a predetermined lesson. It's the teachers that perhaps don't have that skill set, and they just have to accept that sometimes they've got to let things happen without them having total control. And I think that's probably the step change that we would like to see, more acceptance of technology rather than resistance. I mean, why would a school mandate, for example, that children can't bring in their mobile phones? It just seems strange, and I think they're the systemic attitudes that we're trying to address, and just make people realize that actually this can affect positive change, and it can deal with people and pupils in particular, who otherwise would not engage readily in the traditional school environment. And I think those case studies that we've built are really key in evidencing how we can actually support schools better.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point that you just mentioned, that schools in the UK, and I'm personally from Ireland, and it's exactly here, schools are kind of resisting bringing the mobile devices at schools by kids, but they do that anyway. And I think one of the points to that could be also that kids get distracted by using social media and gaming opportunities through the mobile device rather than educational ones. And I think this is the turning point where the kids need to use those devices also for the purpose of education, and it is schools and teachers who need to guide them through them. And I think it's one of the good points that you mentioned also, that it might be outside of the comfort zone of the teachers to kind of expose to technology and try to use them in the classroom. But if we're talking about this, like why they might be declining using technology in the classroom, is like one of the reasons is they feel themselves outside of the comfort zone. What else could that be, in your opinion, especially in UK maybe?
Yeah, it's a big question. That I think. Well, there's two issues really. Firstly, for the UK to remain competitive, it's clearly essential that children are equipped with skills around digital literacy. So we've seen reports from government recently that show quite clearly that, whilst the focus today is on numeracy and literacy, there needs to be a third aspect which is grafted onto those, which is the digital literacy piece. But the blockage is, it comes back to the same issue really, is the schools in the main, because they just do not have enough teaching resource to support a digital literacy agenda. And I think if you accept that as a given, which I can't see it changing personally, because investment can't be made to change that dynamic, I think you have to assume that schools have to embrace commercial technology providers more readily than they are to enable those skills to be provided in a different way. So, maybe careers advice, for example, could be delivered through a cloud-based platform rather than through face-to-face delivery. Maybe some of the A-level provision when you're in the later stages of your education and you need to be looking at how you can self-pace and self-learn, because that's what you'll have to do at university. And maybe some of those A-level provision could be done via online technologies. If you look at what's going on in colleges in the UK, they're being mandated or encouraged to provide at least 20% of their teaching online. And maybe it's time that we had a similar dynamic in schools as well.
This is really good. This is really good. I also heard a lot that universities are encouraging self-paced learning, and they have a lot of resources also based in their cloud and using different resources, connecting different libraries. So basically students have access to a lot of educational material rather than using one library and physically being present there. And on top of that, I think e-libraries is one of the major steps towards the technology in education, because library is a physical location, has opening and closing times, where about the e-library you can access anytime, anywhere, on the go, and so on. And I think it's a massive step in terms of providing even higher education. I strongly believe that schools will also go sooner or later that way as well, because there would be a lot more information out there and a lot of more access to the books that are not available in the physical library as well.
It's a really interesting point, actually. We're just about to launch into India. And when we talk to pupils there, they don't really see schools as a place to learn, because very often the teacher doesn't even turn up, right? So I think 40% of lessons in India just don't happen because the teacher decides they've got something better to do. So the kids who, want to self-learn and improve because it's the way out for them of very often a situation of poverty, they're taking on just what you described, this responsibility to go and find, resources through e-libraries or through Khan Academy or whatever resource they can access to self-teach and progress, because in their minds they've got to be the best that they can be to be successful. And really they're seeing schools only as a place to take an exam and get a certificate rather than to do the teaching and learning. I think that points perhaps towards the way that other countries and other markets might now need to be thinking, because if you look at the attainment those children make, you do question the need for teachers sometimes, because they actually do better on their own than when they're supported through a structured program.
That's interesting information about India. I didn't know that. But I think teacher must be in first place the facilitator and the person who brings the information, the person who drives and shows the way kids need to go. And I think the best way to educate yourself is still read the books and learn on your own. And I think it is actually a disaster if teacher is not showing up at the class. But I think it's also great that technology is helping those kids to find the information on their own and actually get the knowledge and that they require to get at school. That's very interesting information. Thank you.
No problem. I think, when you look at teaching supply as being a constraint increasingly in the UK and in other marketplaces, anything that enables pupils to self-learn in a structured fashion that can be reinforced by qualified teaching resource, not on a full-time basis, has to be looked at quite seriously.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, thank you a lot, Sean, for your for the information that you shared. I think we have touched several really good points, and I think it was very useful information, full podcast. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you to have a great day.
Yeah, thank you for your time as well. Nice to meet you.
Everything changes.